earlier. Sorry for that, but now it is live. So this is July 5th UX meeting, and we talked about the core conversation that IFRIC submitted to Dublin about UX and if one size fits all for usability for site builders and administrators. And we talked about a short code review for the site status page patch that we'll provide more feedback on. And now Chris is up next.
Great. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So a couple quick caveats. This is totally just me shooting from the hip on a lot of this stuff based upon a lot of experience doing panels-based management. And so this is strictly panels related at the moment, but it's kind of a holistic solution. We could talk about implications it has for core, and I'll make some mention of various changes that I want to make to my mockups as I go through it, and some things that I think are still wrong here. So first thing first, I have an appearance that I've added into the primary toolbar. I probably want this to say page, since it allows for page-specific edits to be done. But I'm going to pop that open, and in here, what we're actually going to get are a list of different operations that we can do. I've got blocks and layouts, which should definitely be here. Context and relationships should probably be here. And I initially put theme here, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about that and think that that's probably a very bad idea at this point, especially if I'm changing the main title to page. But the objective here is to be able to begin editing what we see on screen. And this is something that, of course, we would all like. So if you pop open blocks, you're going to get a list of all the blocks that are actually used on the page. I've put a truncated list in there for the time being. And for things like rather long pages, you could actually interact with the list if you wanted to scroll down to a particular block if you knew which block you wanted to edit but weren't sure visually where it was located. Vice versa. These should also probably highlight when you're mousing around on the screen. My initial reaction to this is that it's actually quite busy once I have all these plus buttons and stuff here. So what we've done is we've outlined the regions, and we've put essentially a plus button in between and above and below every block. This means that I don't really have to do a lot of drag and drop-y sort of operations, though that'll be possible here. Because I can actually specify exactly where I want the block to show up before I've even added it. And what's so yeah, I'll just kind of keep moving here. If people have questions, feel free to interject as we go. I'm going to go ahead and just suggest that I would actually like to hide all of these sort of plus buttons and block handles and stuff until a user maybe mouses over a region and then have like that region's handles show up, but it's just a thought. If I were to decide I wanted to add a block between search and tools here, then I'd get kind of a modal window that shows all of my blocks in the system. These would be categorized by their block category, which is something we don't make extensive use of today in core. And I can actually navigate through these different blocks, so I have the ability to look at like what content blocks are provided. I also have a filter up here, so if I want to search for, say, things with the word author, I would find things with the word author. I could also do things like search for anything with the word content in it, and it's going to show me all of my different content here. And I'll actually move this so it's easier to see. This search actually searches across everything in every single category, and this is all kind of driven by Ajax. So if you want to navigate away from your search results, they don't go away. They'll still be there when you come back. If I chose to place recent content, then the recent content block would show up exactly where I had decided I wanted to click it. One of the things I didn't have time for is to add kind of a full screen button here, but some blocks can actually be quite lengthy in their configuration. And so the notion here is that for those blocks, you might want a larger configuration experience. This could even include something like a live preview. I haven't mocked that up yet, but I want to at least acknowledge the notion and acknowledge the fact that some blocks do have very extensive configuration requirements. And so if we go ahead and we save this block, then you know, in my mind, I'm visually imagining like kind of almost an animation where like a card flips based upon whether or not I'm editing it, but it just goes right into place here. And we can go ahead and see that I have these block handles that appear everywhere. And these actually should have been on one of the earlier screens, but I haven't had time to propagate everything everywhere appropriately. So if I mouse over one of these, then I'm going to actually get the handles will pop open. I have a drag and drop capability here. I also have the ability to do things like edit or delete would also be found under here. Things like our contextual links could actually be located under this as well, so that, you know, when we're interacting with this, we have the access to all of the different things which can be done. Again, if I wanted to edit one of these, it would just kind of edit directly in place. And in this case, maybe we like turn off the title and then save this, and now, you know, it saves right back to where I am. Now this is our front page, but in a panels system, we actually have pages where we have panels embedded inside of panels, and this has been something that traditionally has been very difficult to manage inside of an IPE-driven world. So I don't have all my blocks listed here, but you've seen some of them before. So the notion here is if we were to visit maybe a panelized page, and this is a 3-column panelized node. I have a single plus button above the node contents and below the node contents. And so if we were to open up the handles on this one, you'll see I can drag and drop this somewhere, but I also have this button that if I click it, is going to recontextualize all of my panels UI. And so if we turn that on, then the regions that light up are the ones that are specific to the panelized node now. I have the ability to go back up a level, so we'd end up basically right back here. And you know, from this, I have the ability to start adding blocks just like we've seen before. My list of blocks here would change to be specific to the list of blocks that I'm looking at inside of the panelized node. This would also be true for mini panels as well. So this would give us the ability to actually edit customized panelizer overrides, mini panels that are placed, and any given block layout and things like that would also all be part of this. And I just kind of wanted to show the progress that I've made on this so that people can maybe get in early and give some thoughts or feedback on it. So really that's what I have. I think I did that in about 10 minutes. I'm happy to answer any questions that people have about this, and you know, just I'm happy to make what I've done available thus far. I'm going to keep pushing this forward and eventually file an issue once I've got these kind of cleaned up. But you know, all the panels people, most of them have seen some version of what you all have seen today, and you know, we're generally kind of talking about what it would take to do this. So, thoughts? Okay, well that's.
Chris, can you put it back up on the screen, because I wanted to. I'm still kind of looking over things here.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want, I'm happy to go back to any previous iteration. Just let me know. But sometimes your connection hangs, so like I missed half of what you just said.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you great right now.
Okay. So yeah. So I was talking to Sam the other day, And you know, so one of the things that we were talking about is the idea that, you know, once we have this kind of off-canvas area for configuration that we're hoping to get in, that becomes more of a kind of a universal place where this stuff goes.
Yeah.
And one of the assumptions that we've made on that, and I think it's a good one, is that lives on the right-hand side of the screen, because we've already taken up that area on the left-hand side of the screen for the vertical version of the actual menu bar. So you know, the thinking is, you know, let's not sort of confuse the user by putting two very different things in the same place. But I also suggested that we could also have another possibility. I actually opened up an issue for this as well, for adding a bottom tray, like the current IP implementation that Sam has been working on does. I think that I'm not sure that I'm not sure whether I sort of prefer the side or the bottom, but I definitely feel that it should be on the right, and you know, and that we need to think holistically. I mean, one of the things that you're doing here is trying to think holistically about you know, a lot of different kinds of things that the user is trying to do on the page, and I think that in that, you know, kind of breaking up the page into areas where the user has a clear expectation of, you know, these kinds of functionality come from here, is going to be helpful.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on that?
I'll be honest. For me, the bottom bar is totally out, at least in its current implementation, because the way IPE works right now, it tends to take over the entire page and eat all of your screen real estate. And this is one of those things that I find really frustrating about it, because it's very good and it does what we need for the most part. But for me, like, just the specific implementation of it right now, I dislike having the bottom bar. If I could speak to some of your recent mocks where there's kind of like an edit mode and the admin bar sort of changes, and then we get the like block configuration or whatever scrolling in on the right-hand side. Actually really like that. I think visually a lot of that distinguishes things very well. I'm kind of agnostic as to whether it's on the right or on the left. The reason that I put it on the left was because I felt like if I've got two buttons next to each other, say, you know, mine says appearance right now, but I'm thinking page and manage, and those both have completely different menus that drop down in exactly the same space, then like I feel like that would be pretty clear to a user, but you know, user testing could prove me right or wrong on that. One of my intents
about on that is we already have an appearance menu in this underneath manage.
Yeah,
and
that's
I
why I
think
moved
everything
themes
here,
along with that.
Yeah, I mean everything here other than context and relationships, which seems like an odd item out, would fit comfortably under there, and then you could use the left because it would be the equivalent of, you know, you'd just be viewing sub items underneath appearance. So so that would be one way to continue using the left sidebar, but not without mangling it from its current, like, you know, role as like using sub navigation underneath manage.
Yeah, and I hadn't actually thought about doing that. The reason I had kind of promoted it to a top-level item was just to make this stuff like as easy to get to as possible, because manage has appearance in it, quote unquote, and we stuff everything in manage because that's our place to put things today. I was just thinking that it'd be nice to promote like page level changes as highly as possible, because, like, I mean, if I wanted to edit the node, you know, I don't have to navigate very far to do that. If I'm on the node, I can edit the node, and these are, I don't know, in my mind at least, these are kind of related sort of operations. If I want to change how the node looks, I don't want to be navigating somewhere. I think putting theme here was a total mistake on my part, and I shouldn't have named it appearance. I did because I was thinking in those terms to begin with, but I think that was a bad decision on my part.
Well, not necessarily, because like in UX testing, we know that when people are looking for blocks, they initially go to appearance in many cases. So people are expecting to find blocks layout kind of stuff underneath appearance anyway. So I actually think that that is fine. I don't understand how context and relationships would change appearance, though. That seems like it's in a weird spot.
Well, I mean, if I'm on a
I
node page, the node has context, right? Or the users or things like that. So if
Yes,
I
but
want,
it's not visible, right? It has nothing to do with the appearance of the page. And even
It
if
has-
even if that
well,
was renamed page, it still is like, it's just like everything else. Like if we took that menu item out, everything else here is like, hell yeah! Like get all the stuff that changes how the page looks in one place. That sounds great. It's just that one.
right, but context and relationships do change that because it affects what blocks I can place, and it affects what contents appear in the block.
Right, so having it underneath blocks, that makes sense, but not as like a top level item. But that's like a minor point.
Sure.
Yeah, I would also argue for putting it under the existing headings, because we have a growing number of modules that simply say, but I like everything together should go on the top level. And if we start with this, we will just never finish. And this menu will get longer and longer.
Sure. I mean, you're just saying like we'll get more and more items in the top level administration.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a good idea.
One of the things, just to kind of finish answering you, Kevin, the reason I stuck with the left, I think I've kind of said at this point, but tangentially to that, I didn't get rid of this button because I felt like if I was going to integrate with the main toolbar, then I needed to conceptualize what this looked like, both when it's on the left, taking up actual horizontal screen space, and also when it's on the top, and how to keep that as minimal as possible. And actually, I was doing that in my brain because of something you had said, where we didn't really want to take up horizontal space if we didn't have to, because it can affect breakpoints and those sorts of things. And so I fully intend on documenting both what I think it should look like in a left column and in the top bar. So I may be totally barking up the wrong tree there, but that was at least my intent when I started with this.
Right. And I think that it's interesting that you approached it that way because, you know, it's also driven by the way that you've approached this this design, which is that you've retained the concept of an information architecture from the administrative side, and that's what I'm jettisoning completely with the designs that with the mocks that I'm working on for sort of the most basic sort of, you know, first stage of trying to get to the outside in stuff, is that there is no information architecture because the user is selecting something that's on the screen. There's no toggle. You mentioned earlier that, you know, you wanted the menu to appear under the appearance and that there's some visual connection between those things. Well, that definitely makes sense in the context of this design. But if you're thinking about things from the perspective of not of the user is figuring out what they want to do via some kind of an information architecture, but the user is figuring out what they want to do because there's something on the screen that they want to change, and they want to be able to touch the thing and immediately see the configuration options for that thing. So that's my assumption, is that it's all based on actually treating the contents of your site in the most tactile way possible. So whatever I touch, I should be able to immediately see the configuration options for it, whether it's a field or a block or a region. And that there is no information architecture at all that you're using to navigate to that thing.
Well, and one of the big benefits, I think, of the work that you've been doing lately, Kevin, and I didn't try to tack anything to that yet because this was already in process by the time I had seen what you were doing. But
Right.
I think one of the big benefits to what you're doing is having that mode change would actually give us the ability to do things like silence all the links on the page so that no one can actually inadvertently click out of the mode that they're in without actually changing that kind of edit mode that you've got. And I actually really like that because I feel like that's one of the big dangers of doing an outside-in sort of like in-place editing is, you know, if I can click add content in my tools menu down here on accident, odds are I will.
Right.
So, you know,
by
I
the
think
same
that there's some really good like middle ground between what like I really like that aspect of what you're doing. So.
Right. So cool. I mean, and actually the approach that you have with your plus buttons in between the individual blocks, I think is really interesting as well. And I think that we need to definitely explore further where we go with that. I mean, the place block module that we've gotten committed, right? It gets us part of the way, you know, to where we want to be because it gets you to where you got the block onto the page, but still, it's not giving us. This is exactly where I want my block to be, which is what your design does. And I definitely think that we need to have something that's similar to what we see there with the plus icons. I agree that they shouldn't all be there at the same time. There needs to be some kind of way of revealing or concealing them. But yeah, that
more like this, like where if my mouse is maybe over a region, I've got access to those things, or maybe like controlled via
How
JavaScript
does that work in
proximity.
mobile, though?
In mobile, I'd probably just show them. I mean, I guess it would depend. We could certainly, if we're using CSS to control that, then they could certainly be shown or hidden based upon, you know, based upon media query as well as whatever other thing we're using. One of the other things I wanted to point out here was that I think having the blocks documented like this, I mean, to us, these don't really look like much of anything, but it's a good way to, like, if I wanted to click, you know, my site branding block and have it automatically show its handles, I could do that. Even if I don't know, like as a first-time user, if I don't know what is actually the site branding block here, it's a good way to become accustomed. The other thing I can do is for blind users, I can actually put hidden form elements directly in the menu here, essentially, quote-unquote menu. And then, you know, we can have things like region and weight right there. And, you know, this doesn't hurt you know, our blind users at all because it's essentially very, very similar to the block administration that we have today in terms of what sort of things are doable there. And I could promote the operations that can be done throughout the rest that I've demoed otherwise, like editing and deleting directly into those elements without making them like have to navigate all over the page to get there. And I don't know a lot about that accessibility. I was just thinking of it in those terms some.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it definitely, and not just for accessibility, that we gain a lot of control. I mean, I've also been an advocate of listing the blocks in the off canvas, you know, in the tray or in you have it here in the menu, because using table drag, you know, on those blocks that you see there is a lot more simple to execute, and also simpler, I think, for the user than dragging these blocks around on the screen, particularly if they have to drag them across scroll, which is the biggest problem with drag drop.
Yeah, absolutely. And as long as it's updating in both places, regardless of where they do it, I'm completely on board with that.
Yeah, and to your point, clicking on one of them is going to, so if you were to, say, for example, drag one of the blocks to a place where it was now no longer on the screen using table drag in the off canvas, then your screen should presumably automatically scroll to that place.
Yes,
when the block has
absolutely,
been
yes.
And then
yes,
it keeps.
And same thing with really long pages. If I have a really long page and I have my list of blocks over here, when I click on one of those, it should scroll to it and pop open handles and things like that for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's cool. So one question that I have about panels, about the nexus or the sort of the delta between panels and core blocks is you have a blocks category here, right? Is that just core blocks, or is it?
Core blocks does all of this. In fact, I have a patch that isn't applied to CTools yet, but I have a patch in the issue queue that does exactly this functionality that you're seeing right here. I applied my patch and started taking screenshots. And so that's for CTools, but it's all it's doing is kind of mashing up what Core can already do.
Right. So we're essentially we're bringing blocks and panels kind of back together again in a way, and not having this sort of separation of the two that we have in Drupal 7, right? Is that what I'm getting here, or no?
Well, yeah, because I mean, to be technical, panels doesn't actually use blocks in Drupal 7. It uses like this completely different plugin type that Earl invented, and that plugin type happens to wrap blocks, so you can use all the blocks through the plugin type, but it doesn't use blocks directly. And in Drupal 8, like all of our efforts throughout the entire 8x cycle was to remove that abstraction and make Drupal 8's blocks capable of doing everything that that plugin type could do in Drupal 7. So yes, these things were always meant to do this.
Right.
Also, so I'll point out in this UI, I've got icons here, but we could just as easily attempt to do things like renders and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, with the screenshotting service.
Or not even a screenshot, like an actual, like, here, Drupal render this, and then yank stuff out of like render cache to show what's in each category.
Ooh, that sounds like it would be a big performance hit. But anyway, it's certainly not my place to make that determination. Every time I ever come across that kind of idea before, though, people say to me, "Oh no, we won't render them. We'll just use a screenshotting service."
Well, I've written it abstractly enough that we could do many different things. I'm just pointing out we could do a lot of things here.
Cool. So I definitely like the idea of having the list of the blocks in the that the user can see. You make a very good point about that there's a learning that happens. That when you see it and you click on it and you see and it's bound to the thing on the page, and that it scrolls to the thing on the page, that you learn what that thing is.
Yeah, exactly. I want the UI to teach the user what they're doing as they do it.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Anyways, I think I've taken up about 30 minutes, and I was trying to keep this to 20. Why don't I stop doing this? And if people have other questions, I'm on IRC all the time, and I'm on internal chats at Acquia or whatever if you're an Acquian. So just ping me, and I'm happy to share anything I've got here and answer further questions or screen share more.
Do you have an issue for this already?
Not yet. I was trying to get all my ducks in a row, and a lot of the work for this has happened in like the last 2 to 3 days. So I'd be happy to make an issue and put what I've got out there so that other people can kind of see where I'm going, and we could iterate on it from there. My Photoshop file is a total mess, and most people don't even work in Photoshop for this stuff. So I'm not sure of how much use that is, but I'd be happy to share whatever I've got in whatever format is useful.
Yeah, if you could, one really quick way to do this, Chris, would be just export layers to files,
yeah.
and you could just take your layer groups that you showed and hid as you were going through, and just make that the level of granularity for your export.
Yep, I'm super happy to do that if people find that useful.
I would definitely find it useful.
All right, cool, can do.
Awesome, thanks. So did somebody else have another topic? Gabor?
I'm not aware. I think that's your topic is the one that's left.
Right. I just wanted to mention some of the progress that's been made in the kind of workflow related stuff, which is I think there's been some good progress on some of these issues. That's kind of moving us into a place where we have a better idea of some better usability. Notably, Larry, I think, has kind of come around to some of the thoughts that Roy, that you and I had both sort of been kind of harping on. Have you, Roy? I think you've been in these issues as well, around like the particular issues that I'm talking about are content moderation module issue, and then the child issues of that. Decide on default moderation states, scalability issues, and design, and the basic module to put it into core as experimental. So the thing that I think has been a kind of a breakthrough on this, which I'm happy about, very happy about, is that Larry seems open to the idea of having a edit most recent version, rather than just sort of not telling the user what the logic is for setting a default. And so what your experience would be is that in your drop-down from the content page, you would see a link that said edit most recent version instead of just edit. And I think that this is really, really good, because it's not clear, it wasn't clear, at least in the prior versions, to the user what edit was going to be editing, right? When you have multiple states of moderation and many revisions. So when we add this ability to go ahead of, or to fork off of the actual published revision and work on something that's not the published version, we need to be really explicit with the user about what it is that they're editing, and we weren't being explicit, or at least the current Workbench moderation module isn't explicit, and nobody was saying that we needed to be more explicit. So I think that's one good thing. And then the other thing that I think is valuable, did we lose Roy? I think we did.
Yeah,
yes,
delete stuff.
Oh, right. Oh, that's too bad. And then the other thing that's really good, I think, is that Bojan's or the sort of design that we sort of collaborated on making revision states or revision transitions a little bit more usable is, people seem to be happy with that, and Roy and Bojan both provided sort of iterations on that design, but the thing that I think is going to be the sort of the thing that's going to make that really work and not be as difficult to use as it is right now is adding a little bit of disambiguation between what the state is and what the status is. This was a problem because you had published as a status, is it published or not published, and then also as a published as a workflow state, and Larry seems to be, or at least he's said that he's open to, and it does not conflict with the way that it's architected, for us to have a checkbox in the UI which enables the user to say, use the status as the state name. In other words, if we want to have a state that is published and that checkbox is checked, it's just called published. We don't have to say published, parentheses, published, or something along those lines, something that expresses both the status and the state. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, it does. I'm trying to find the issue that we discussed last week so that we have more context, but I failed to find the link. Trying to manage through all the meta issues of.
There are many meta issues in this, and it is a little bit difficult to sort of navigate through all of them. But I believe the one that this is in is 2757275. Decide on default moderation states.
Mm-hmm.
No. Is it? No, that's not it actually. I am wrong.
So we have to deal with scalability issues in the UI, which we discussed last week.
That could be it.
This one, 757349.
Oh no! So this is the one where we iterated, Roy and myself and Boyan and other people, and that has some good progress on it. But that also is not the issue that I was just referring to. The one that
there are indeed many issues.
I think it's the data integrity and uninstall issues one, maybe. Yes, it is. It's the data integrity and uninstall issues. 2757119.
That one.
Yeah. So I think this is really good progress. I think this is. I feel much better overall about the usability of this, and I was quite worried about it. Even like middle of last week, that we were going to have some, because particularly after going through this with Thomas Howell, whose whole team just it wants to tear their hair out when they try to use workbench moderation. So
has Thomas talked to you at all about? I did a mock-up for him where we changed some of the menus, like some of the tabs and local actions on a node that was under moderation. Has he passed that to you at all?
Yeah, he showed that to me, and we did some more iteration and discussion. We had some discussions around it, and actually posted several issues.
Okay, cool. As long as something's happening there, that's all I wanted to know, because I thought that like our initial talk on that had actually turned out really well. So if you guys are talking about that topic at all, that's all I really care about.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely being addressed. And actually, I proposed an issue to add a kind of a button bar to a button bar widget above the Save Publish button, which shows your workflow states in a row. So you could literally just click the next one rather than sort of having to grok these complexly worded transition states in the dropdown, like move from published to revision or things like that. So I think that that picked up on some of the same things that you were pointing out. I'll give you a link to that issue. I can find it.
Awesome.
What the heck is it? There has really been kind of a proliferation of issues around this, but yeah. Let me start from this one. Anyway, I'll find it. I can't find it right now, but I'll find it and chat it to you.
Okay, great.
Awesome. So that was all from me, Gabor.
All right then. So if nobody else has other topics, and since we lost both Roy and Boyan, I guess that's it for today's meeting. So thanks everyone for coming. Let's look at the issues that we've posted, and great progress. See you next week.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Oh.